demonstration of OfficeWatch SL Professional, Metropolis's SMB solution for call detail reporting and telemanagement. On my screen, I'm showing the web interface for OfficeWatch SL Professional. I'm also logged in as an administrator. As an administrator, I have the ability to configure the software, pull reports, and receive alerts. Going to also show how you can set up other users with different permissions. For example, I have an administrator. The administrator can do all those add moves and changes. There's also an alarms user access. An alarms user receives a pop-up if there's been an emergency dial, like 911, if there's been a toll fraud situation, for example, expensive call, or if we stop collecting CDR or SMDR from any one of your sites over a given time interval. Something to be cognizant of is you can have an unlimited number of simultaneous users that have access to OfficeWatch from the web. Someone with report access, you can limit their visibility to a specific department, perhaps a specific location, maybe a team. You have up to 3 different hierarchy levels to group extensions into. For example, if I had this report user at the Atlanta branch, or location, I could limit their visibility to just that Atlanta location's extensions by leaving the checkbox on Atlanta and everything else null. Okay. So I'm logged in as an admin. I wanted to show some of the different features of QLive. All right, so I'm collecting CDR, or the OfficeWatch software is collecting CDR, which we're providing a live view of calls. All right, so again, these are the list of calls today. Also the alerts that could have gone off. A hotspot map, which you can plot inbound and outbound calls on a world, region, or local map. There's also the ability to see your call volume by hour, by day, by week, and by month. Okay. Most of the work is done within the report generator, and we're really known for ease of use. That's our core competency at Metropolis. So the user simply goes to the ribbon on the top of the screen and goes to Report Generator. Here is where we have over 200 templates, also the ability to customize reports based on what you'd like to see. For example, one of our more popular reports is by extension, or DN. Here is where I'm defining that range of extensions that I want to report on. I could easily enter in an individual extension. Date and time filtering criteria for the report. So this would be all calls from beginning to end of day on August 9th. I can also filter by the corresponding call type. That could be internal, that being extension to extension dial. Inbound, right, so incoming call. Also, outbound are designated by several different call types, that being a local, local toll, interstate, long distance, international, and emergency. All right, so again, very useful to identify how many international phone calls are placed. Simply leave that checkbox enabled and everything else null. Same philosophy for your different departments and locations. Sometimes I have questions that are asked, all right, what if I want to report on non-sequential extensions? Well, put them into a hierarchy level, that being a department, a location, or enabling a hierarchy level called team, right, for quick filter. From the output format perspective, you have multiple options from the OfficeWatch SL Professional version, that being HTML, Excel, and PDF. You can pull those reports to screen. You can save them as a file. You can email them directly from within OfficeWatch, or set them up on a schedule. That's what most of our customers would do. Just set it and forget it. Maybe it's the sales manager that wants a report delivered to their inbox at the end of day for just the sales rep extensions. Or maybe you're doing some sort of bill back and you want a report going out the last day of the month, and you want to include all calls from the beginning to end of month. So you have first of month, you have last of month, and this report could be delivered just to the customer service manager for bill-back purposes, right? There's also the option to choose a specific date that you want that report to be delivered. All right, so again, I like to say set it and forget it. You never even need to log into OfficeWatch. Finally, there's a memorize option. Memorizing is going to save this report for easy retrieval and edit in the future. Right, so those are the options that are available on the template. If I were to go here and pick a report to pull to screen, I'm just going to include all of my departments and locations. I'm going to leave that as HTML file format, so this will pop up in my browser. Again, I just simply click Report, pops up here to where I'm able to see John Adams over the course of day made or received 4 phone calls. Here's the total duration and the average duration of those calls. Each call, I can display the date, the time, the number dialed, which is also interchangeably used with caller ID if it's an inbound phone call. For example, here, this would be the caller ID of the customer calling in from New Mexico. We can also see that by the designated call class, so local call versus incoming call. All right. We can also report on auth codes or account codes, so you'll notice that's included in the template, and the ring time in seconds depending on your PBX. So again, how long did it take before the call were to be answered? Right. So again, very useful in knowing exactly calls that are coming in or out of a particular extension. Our reports also have summary information, so this will just simply add up all of those phone calls in summation, so you can quickly see which extensions are more productive than others and so on, or users. For example, John Adams made those 4 phone calls. Here's the total duration of the call, the average duration, the average ring time, the number of abandoned phone calls, and the abandonment percentage. Right? So again, this can be very useful in ranking productivity of each one of your employees. As I move across the ladder, we have departmental reports. So very similar to extension detail, there's department detail. There's also department summary. If I just wanted a quick snapshot on what's my call volume by department, again, I pull up that report to the screen, and I can see customer service, there were 255 phone calls over 29 hours of duration. We could also apply additional columns to this report, depending on whether or not you want call costing for bill back. So again, those columns can be added very easily. Okay. So again, that's a department summary report. We could also break down the department summary report by call class. So maybe you just want to know how many inbound calls versus long distance calls versus international calls and so on. So again, another very useful report would be breaking down by call class. As well as pulling other organization reports, for example, location. You can also change the title of these. Maybe you're a bank and instead of it being called a location, it's a branch. We can easily change those titles as needed. But if I were to pull this report as location here, again, this gives me the quick breakdown of call by location. So I can see Atlanta, there were 6 calls, or as Dallas, there were 14 phone calls, and so on. So again, that's how our hierarchy levels work, very useful. You have auth codes. If you're using those, again, those can either be forced or maybe an account code if you're interested in time spent on call using those auth codes or account codes. All right. You also have the ability to pull just a call activity by hour day report. This is simply going to show your busy hour over the course of day. Again, this could be a specific location, could be an extension, could be a department, but in this example, I can see that there were 150 calls that came in between 3 and 4 o'clock, right? 622 outbound calls and 772 total calls. So you might want to staff your workforce efficiently at that hour, or maybe you're noticing a lot of after-hours phone calls that are coming in. You can also pull this report by day of week, so we can quickly see that Wednesday being a day of higher call volume with some totals on the bottom of the screen. So again, very useful report. Other reports that are frequently used would be a simple dial number detail report. Right? So this gives you the ability to trace an inbound or outbound phone call based on the digits that are dialed or caller ID from the inbound perspective. For example, show me all the times that 404-537-8898 were dialed. Again, this would show all the extensions that had called that number or all the extensions that had received calls from this number. So not only is it used from the outbound perspective, but also inbound. So this would be the caller ID. Okay. You can also do wildcards here. So maybe you want to know The 404 you know, but not the NXX, right? Or and you do know the remaining 4 digits there. You can also do partial digits. So show me all the times 404 were dialed, maybe all the times that 911 was called, maybe all the times that a specific country were dialed. So again, a lot of possibilities to prove if a call was or was not received from a specific number. Right. So again, you have your dial number detail. You also have frequently dialed numbers. This can be very useful in noticing any sort of trending. For example, I'm going to leave this as null, and I'm going to choose, let's leave inbound checked as well, and I'm going to run this report to screen, and I can quickly see over the course of the day there that this phone number in Egypt was dialed once. Maybe you notice that this call was placed 20 times over the course of the day. It could mean that you have a situation of employee phone abuse, or perhaps your phone system's even been hacked. From the inbound perspective, maybe you notice that you have 10 calls coming in from the same number. Why are they calling in 10 times? So they're not receiving good service? Or from the sales perspective, maybe it's a sales rep that's supposed to be hunting for new business. You pull this report on their extension, let's say every week or every month. If they're consistently calling the same phone numbers over and over again, maybe they're just trying to rack up their call count, or maybe they're making personal phone calls. So very useful report for trending, and employee phone abuse would be frequently dialed number report. Right. You can also sort those by the most frequently used extensions. So maybe there's a specific department here, and you want to know who's made the most phone calls over the course of the day and have that call scheduled to the sales manager. All right. So again, another useful report there. Also the ability to show maybe just expensive phone calls, or maybe calls with a long duration, or come into the software and customize a report based on what you'd like to see. So you'll notice the parameters are very similar. If I scroll down, I can pick and choose the columns that are relevant in the report. That being date, time, extension, name, the number dialed, used interchangeably with caller ID, the location, based on the location of the customer that you're dialing, or if they're calling in, the location based on their phone number there, right? There's also the ability to pull a call by duration, trunk, whether or not it's in or out, the ring time or hold time in seconds, some of these being PBX specific. Specifically, I mean ring time and hold time. A lot of PBXs provide that information, but some do not. All right. Also the ability to report on your hunt groups, if a call were to be transferred to or from a specific PN or extension. So again, lots of flexibility in pulling report columns into a report. You can also, again, group them, you can sort them, even write queries directly into the software. So show me where calls exceeded 20 seconds of ring time on any of my extensions, or where calls exceeded 20 seconds of ring time and were abandoned, or where a call was lasted longer than 5 minutes. Okay. So that's the report generator. Do know that those memorized and scheduled reports can easily be modified and changed. The user just goes to scheduled reports here, or memorized reports. They're going to, let's say, modify the distribution list on a scheduled report that they have going out, maybe activate it or deactivate it, so on. Same philosophy for the memorized reports here that you're pulling frequently. Okay, so that's the report generator. If you ever did need assistance from Metropolis, something that we're known for is our support. You just go to help and remote support. That gives us the ability to help the customer using the software. Maybe that's creating a custom report for them. Maybe it's configuring the alarms. So there are 4 different types of alarms that are inherent within OfficeWatch. First is PBX inactive. So we're saying if the PBX stops delivering its data for, say, 10 minutes between business hours, well, calls should be made or received during business hours within a 10-minute interval. If not, we're going to provide a pop-up, an email, and a text message. All right? Why is that really important? Well, if the OfficeWatch software stops collecting CDR, not only are your reports not going to be accurate, but more importantly, we won't be able to deliver the time-sensitive notifications on, for example, emergency dials. So that's another very important alert. simply go to emergency call alarms. Just like the PBX inactive alarm, this can be delivered via audible and visible pop-up. So again, I'm clicking on the pop-up here. It would pop up out of the browser with a really loud siren, right? So it can be very useful. Also, the ability to send an email with 2 specific email addresses. You can enter in multiple email addresses if you'd like. You also have a carbon copy. And then the different parameters that you want to include in the body of the email. Maybe that's date, time, extension, the name, the department, the location, the branch, any user-defined note. So you can quickly determine if someone is in need or perhaps it's a misdial. There are many occasions where an employee will dial 911, hang up the phone, in which case the police can show up to your office and hit you with the fine. So you'll notice that there is a duration field, which if you see the call lasted 20 seconds, or let's say 5 seconds, likely that's a misdial, whereas if you see a 5-minute 911 call, likely that's a true emergency, right? Something else that's important is there is an additional module to OfficeWatch SL Professional if you want that alert to be delivered immediately as opposed to upon conclusion of phone call. What do I mean by immediately? Right after that last one is dialed, the phone is still off hook, that alert goes out, right? There would be a second alert that would go out after conclusion of phone call. So that can be very important to notice misdials versus true emergencies. Natively, the OfficeWatch SL Professional software sends that alert right after that 911 call has been completed. But again, if you want to add that module, the notification would be sent out right after the emergency dial, and then again after the call is hung up. That being a text message, also an email. So that's emergency alerts. Finally, there's something called toll fraud notifications, very important for risk mitigation. Under toll fraud here, you'll notice that I have several different use cases that are set up, one being expensive, which we encourage all customers to configure. Last thing you want is a very expensive phone call being placed and you're hit with a huge carrier bill, or maybe international calls you want to be alerted on. Let me walk you through some of the different thresholds here as we create multiple toll fraud alerts. For example, expensive call to the Bahamas. Maybe that's a call that's just placed on the weekends when the phone shouldn't even be in use, possibly just after hours. Here's where I'm defining the extensions from within a specific department or location that can trigger the alert. Here's where I'm defining the call class. So this is any call. So any call, regardless if it's international or long distance or intrastate, as long as it's exceeding a $10 call cost, you're going to get that alert. Right? Also notice that there's a special prefix option. So maybe that's a call to an area like the Congo, 011-242, so international call to country code, or to a specific phone number. So maybe you've reprimanded an employee, stop making personal phone calls to your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. You enter in that phone number. Next time that number is dialed, you receive an alert. Or possibly from the inbound perspective, maybe you've been victim of fraudulent phone calls or solicitation phone calls, and you've asked, please put me on the do not call list. Well, the next time you receive a call from a specific number, again, that being the caller ID, you could receive an alert. Right? So again, many different use cases there outside of just risk mitigation on expensive or international calls. Those could be personal calls, malicious calls, harassing inbound phone calls, maybe the police calling back in after a 911 dial. Maybe you have other prefixes like 555 is code blue for suspicious person on campus. Again, you can be very creative and set up as many of these toll fraud alerts as you'd like. Okay, so those are the different types of alerts. Do notice that we can set up rates here if needed, right? Some customers do not care about call cost, but rates can be configured. We have rate tables that are preloaded in the system for AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. Right? You can also create your own different rate tables here. Maybe that's in a per minute 2-step or a per minute 1-step with different types of rate or call classes. Right? So again, rates, another topic, but something again that we can provide if you're doing any sort of bill back or curious about those toll fraud calls over $10, right? There's also the ability to map all of your different extensions from within the software. For example, John Smith is assigned to extension 100 within the sales department at the Atlanta location. If I wanted to reassign that extension to maybe Frank Bell, I would type in his name. All right, I could put Frank Bell in a new department or assign that DN to another location here. You can also choose a particular color that you want to display on that hotspot map. So that's one method. There's also the ability to do an import. Simply provide we would provide an Excel spreadsheet, and you just do a simple upload into OfficeWatch with the corresponding extension, the name that you want to associate to that extension, department and location. And depending on your PBX, there are direct tie-ins, right? So we can map whatever the extension in your phone system is to a name. There's also the ability to connect to something called Active Directory via LDAP. So under setup options here, notice that there's LDAP settings. Here is where we can define your Active Directory, all right, your server name, port, DN, version, and so on, and then an attribute mapping, right? So again, this is usually telephone number, IP phone, name, department, location. We would just do a quick synchronization upon initial implementation and then pick a time every day that we would go and make that synchronization or import. So if you're maintaining an Active Directory and it's clean, right, a lot of customers' ADs are not clean or well maintained, and garbage from your AD is going to create some issues. So again, make sure that your AD is clean before using this feature. So that's what I wanted to discuss regarding rates and users. If you have any other questions, do not hesitate to reach out to your reseller or to your account manager. Again, thank you for participating in training today. Have a demonstration. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.